A young beggar boy invaded the luxury hotel, but the millionaire froze when he saw his watch. Richard Anderson was finishing his business meeting in the main hall of the Grand Malibu Hotel when he heard shouts coming from the reception. His construction company had just closed the biggest contract in history, but nothing could fill the void he had felt since losing contact with his family years ago. That's when he saw the boy running between the tables, chased by two furious security guards. The boy couldn't have been more than 12 years old. His clothes were dirty and torn, but it was the golden watch on his wrist that made the businessman stop breathing. That shiny, unique object was identical to the one he had given his son before everything fell apart in his life. "Grab that kid," shouted one of the security guards. "Wait!" Richard's voice echoed through the hall, making everyone stop. The boy stumbled and fell right at the businessman's feet. With his heart beating uncontrollably, Richard looked more closely at the watch. The small stars engraved on the side were unmistakable. It was impossible, but there was the proof before his eyes. "Where did you get this?" asked Richard, pointing to the watch. The boy looked at him fearfully, trying to get up to run away again. "I won't hurt you," Richard said in a softer voice. "I just want to know about the watch." "It's mine," replied the boy, protecting his wrist. "It's always been mine." The hotel manager approached, visibly irritated. "Mr. Anderson, I apologize for the disturbance. We'll remove this boy immediately." "No," said Richard, without taking his eyes off the boy. "He stays." The surprise was general. Richard Anderson was known for his coldness in business and little patience with any kind of disorder. But there he was, protecting a beggar boy. "What's your name?" asked Richard, crouching down to the boy's level. "Joey," replied the boy, still wary. "Joey, are you hungry?" The boy nodded timidly. Richard stood up and addressed the manager. "Prepare the best table in the restaurant. My guest and I are going to have dinner." The people around whispered among themselves, incredulous at the scene. The richest businessman in the city dining with a street boy was something they never imagined seeing. During dinner, Richard discovered that Joey lived under the Midtown overpass with an elderly lady named Mrs. Ruth. They survived on handouts and leftover food they managed to get from downtown restaurants. "And the watch?" insisted Richard. "Who gave it to you?" "Mrs. Ruth said I already had it when she found me," replied Joey, nervously fiddling with the object. "She said it was the only thing I had from my real family." Richard's heart raced. 8 years ago, his son Matthew had disappeared during a visit to Central Park. They never found him again, despite all the searches. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, feel free to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. "How long have you lived with Mrs. Ruth?" asked Richard, trying to keep his voice steady. "Forever," said Joey. "She told me she found me alone in a square when I was little. I was crying a lot and only had this watch." Richard had to hold back from crying right there. The coincidences were too many to be just coincidences, but he needed to be sure before getting his hopes up. "Joey, would you like to see where I live? It's a big house. It has a pool." "And Mrs. Ruth?" asked the boy, worried. "I can't leave her alone." The boy's kindness touched Richard deeply. Even living in poverty, Joey worried about the person who took care of him. "Mrs. Ruth would be welcome too," Richard assured. The next day, Richard hired the best private detective in Los Angeles, Robert Miller. I needed to investigate Joey's story and find out if his suspicions made sense. Meanwhile, he took Joey and Mrs. Ruth to a comfortable apartment in Beverly Hills. The elderly woman, about 70 years old, was wary but grateful for the help. "Mr. Richard," said Mrs. Ruth, while Joey played on the balcony. "You don't know me. Why are you doing this for us?" Richard hesitated before answering. "Let's just say I have my reasons. Mrs. Ruth, do you remember how you found Joey?" The woman closed her eyes, as if reliving that day. "It was on a Tuesday 8 years ago. I was coming back from church when I heard a desperate cry in Washington Square. It was already about 10 at night, very late for a child to be alone. And you didn't see anyone around?" "I did," said Mrs. Ruth, lowering her voice. "An elegant woman running out of a black car. She was crying too. And there was a man in a suit watching everything from a distance." Richard's heart raced. His ex-wife Jennifer drove a black car at the time of Matthew's disappearance. Robert Miller called the next afternoon with the first findings. Richard, I found something interesting. On April 15, 2016, a child was indeed found in Washington Square by an elderly woman. The date coincides exactly with your son's disappearance. Is there more? Your ex-wife was in the area that day. I got security camera footage showing her car passing through the square at the time Mrs. Ruth mentioned. Richard felt a mix of relief and anger. If Joey was really Matthew, that meant Jennifer knew what had happened to the boy all these years. Robert, I need you to set up a meeting with Jennifer, without warning her about what we've discovered. I'm already arranging it. She still lives at the same address in Marina del Rey. That night, Richard watched Joey sleeping in the guest room. The boy's face had familiar features, but 8 years changed a child a lot. There was only one way to be absolutely sure. The next day, he took Joey to get DNA tests. The boy didn't quite understand the procedure, but cooperated when Richard explained it was just to make sure he was healthy. "Mr. Richard, why are you being so good to me?" Joey asked on the way back. Richard stopped the car and looked at the boy. "Because everyone deserves to have a family that cares about them. And because you remind me of someone very important." "Who?" "Maybe one day I'll tell you the whole story." The meeting with Jennifer was scheduled for the following Saturday, at the same hotel where it had all begun. Richard arrived first and chose a discreet table in the restaurant. Jennifer showed up 15 minutes late, as always. At 42, she still had the beauty that had won him over 20 years ago, but there was something different in her eyes, a sadness that wasn't there before. "Richard, are you okay? It was a surprise to get your invitation," said Jennifer, sitting at the table. "Jennifer, I need to ask you some questions about Matthew." Her face instantly paled. "Matthew? Why do you want to talk about that now? It's been 8 years. Because maybe I've found him." Jennifer dropped the water glass she was bringing to her mouth. "What do you mean, found?" "That's impossible, Richard. You know he what, Jennifer? You never finished that sentence." "That he disappeared in the park. We searched for months. But you were in Washington Square on the day of the disappearance. Why?" Jennifer stood up abruptly. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I'm not going to sit here listening to these accusations." "Jennifer, sit down. I have proof." Robert Miller approached the table with a tablet in his hands. On the screen, the security camera footage clearly showed Jennifer's car in the square. "This doesn't prove anything," said Jennifer, but her voice trembled. "It proves you lied, and it will prove much more when the DNA result comes out." "DNA? What are you talking about?" Richard called Joey, who was waiting in the reception with Mrs. Ruth. When the boy approached the table, Jennifer put her hand to her mouth, stifling a scream. "It can't be," she whispered. "Hello, ma'am," said Joey politely. Jennifer began to cry desperately. "Matthew, my God, is it really you?" "My name is Joey," said the boy, confused. "Jennifer, what happened that day?" asked Richard, holding Joey's hand. I can't talk about it here," said Jennifer, looking around nervously. "Then let's go somewhere else." They headed to Richard's private office on the top floor of the commercial building next to the hotel. Mrs. Ruth stayed with Joey in the waiting area while the adults talked. "Jennifer, the time for truth has come. What happened to Matthew?" Jennifer took a deep breath before starting. "We were fighting a lot at the time. You were always traveling for work. I felt lonely. I met someone else." "I know that, but what does that have to do with our son?" "Henry, he said it would be better if Matthew lived with my sister for a while, just until things calmed down between us." Richard felt anger rising in his chest. "Henry? Who? Your current boyfriend?" "Ex-boyfriend. We broke up 2 years ago." "Go on." "Henry offered to take Matthew to my sister's house in Santa Barbara, but when they got there, she wasn't home. Matthew got scared and said he wanted to go back home." Richard was growing impatient. "And then?" Henry got nervous. "He said he couldn't go back because you would find out about the plan. He stopped the car at Washington Square to think about what to do." "And why were you there?" "Because Matthew called from Henry's cell phone crying, saying he wanted his mommy. I rushed to meet him." "Jennifer, what did you do with our son?" Jennifer was sobbing now. When I got there, Matthew had disappeared. Henry said he ran away when he got out of the car to buy water. We searched all night but couldn't find him. And why did you never tell me the truth? Because Henry said you would never forgive me, that I would lose custody of Matthew forever. He made up the story about the park to protect our version. Richard was trying to process all the information. Where is this Henry now? I don't know. After we broke up, he disappeared. I think he left Los Angeles. Robert Miller, who had been listening to everything, spoke up. Richard, I'm going to investigate this Henry. I need the full name and all the information Jennifer can provide. Henry Wilson Edwards, said Jennifer. He worked at a construction company that competed with yours. Richard froze. He knew Henry Wilson very well. Not only was he from the competition, but he had tried to buy his company several times in recent years. Jennifer, do you realize what you did? Our son was lost on the streets for 8 years because of your irresponsibility. I know, Richard, I know. Not a day goes by that I don't think about it. Robert interrupted the discussion. Richard, can I speak with you privately? They went out into the hallway. There's something you need to know about this Henry. He didn't disappear from Los Angeles. In fact, he opened a very successful construction company in Long Beach in recent years. What do you mean? And there's more. He has tried to buy information about you and your company several times through third parties. It seems he has a special interest in your business. Richard returned to the room where Jennifer was still crying. Jennifer, I need you to tell me everything about Henry, from when you met him to the last contact you had. I met him at a business event 3 months before Matthew's disappearance. He was charming, attentive, made me feel special. And when did you start seeing each other? Soon after. He said you didn't appreciate me, that I deserved better. Richard realized she had been manipulated. Jennifer, don't you find it strange that a man you barely knew offered to solve problems with your son? I was confused at the time, Richard. Henry seemed to have all the answers. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Robert showed some photos on the tablet. This is Henry now. Do you recognize him? Jennifer nodded in confirmation. It was really him. But he looks different. Heavier, with a beard. He's changed a lot in recent years, and apparently became quite wealthy too. Richard was beginning to understand the extent of the manipulation they had suffered. Robert, I want you to investigate all of this Henry's business dealings over the past 8 years, and I want a meeting with him tomorrow. I'm already arranging it. They returned to the waiting area, where Joey was playing with a toy car that Mrs. Ruth had brought in her purse. Joey, called Richard, do you remember anything from before you lived with Mrs. Ruth? The boy stopped playing and became thoughtful. Sometimes I dream of a big house and a swimming pool, and there's a man who calls me by another name. What name? Ma. Something with Ma. Jennifer covered her mouth with her hand. Matthew, she whispered. Yeah, said Joey excitedly. Matthew! That's the name the man said. Richard knelt in front of the boy. Joey, would you like to know who that man in your dreams is? I would. It's me. And Matthew is your real name. The boy looked confused from Richard to Jennifer. Do I have another daddy and another mommy? Yes, said Richard, his voice choked up. We are your real parents, and we've spent all these years looking for you. But what about Mrs. Ruth? Is she my family too? Mrs. Ruth approached and stroked the boy's hair. My child, family isn't just those who share the same blood. It's those who love and care for us. You can have both kinds of family. The simple woman's wisdom moved everyone. The next day, Robert managed to schedule a meeting with Henry at his office in Long Beach. Richard was accompanied by the detective and a lawyer. Henry received them in a luxurious office, clearly successful in business. At 45, he had an arrogant air that Richard didn't remember from when they worked in the same department. Richard Anderson, what a surprise, said Henry, pretending cordiality. I heard you've been getting involved with homeless people lately. The provocation confirmed that Henry knew about recent events. Henry, I'm not going to waste time with beating around the bush. I want to talk about Matthew. Henry's face completely changed. I don't know what you're talking about. My son whom you helped disappear 8 years ago. That's ridiculous. You can't prove anything. Robert placed a recorder on the table. Actually, we can. Jennifer told us everything yesterday. Henry began to sweat. Jennifer was always unstable. You can't believe everything she says. Then tell me your version, said Richard. Henry stood up and went to the window. I have nothing to tell. You're wasting your time. Henry, I found my son. He's alive and well. The only thing I want now is to understand why you did this. Did what? I didn't do anything. You manipulated my ex-wife, convinced her to take my son away from me, and then abandoned a 4-year-old child in a square. Henry turned abruptly. I didn't abandon anyone. The kid ran away. So you admit you were there. Henry realized he had given himself away. But that was a long time ago. Things happened differently than planned. What plan, Henry? Jennifer said she wanted to separate from you. I was trying to help. That's a lie. You wanted to harm me from the start. Henry laughed bitterly. You always had it easy, Richard. A company inherited from your father, a perfect marriage, a handsome son. I had to build everything from scratch. And that justifies destroying a family. I didn't want to destroy anything. I just wanted Jennifer to be happy. Robert showed some photographs. These are images of you watching Richard and his family months before the disappearance. You were planning this for a long time. The photos showed Henry following Richard in various places, at work, at the supermarket, at Matthew's school. I was getting to know my competitor. It's normal in the business world. Following his family is normal too. Richard was growing impatient. Enough lies, Henry. My son spent 8 years living on the streets because of you. You're going to explain exactly what happened that night. Henry returned to his chair, defeated. All right, but you're not going to like what you're about to hear. I'm prepared. I was really interested in Jennifer, but it was also true that I wanted to harm you professionally. When I found out your marriage was in trouble, I saw an opportunity. Go on. I convinced Jennifer that you were an absent father, that Matthew would be better off raised away from you. The plan was to take the boy to Santa Barbara temporarily, until you got divorced. And then? When we got to the square, Matthew was crying a lot. He wanted to go back home. I got out of the car to think about what to do, and when I came back, he was gone. Did you look for him? I looked all night, but a 4-year-old can hide in many places. And why didn't you call the police? Because I would panic. Jennifer too. We made up the story about the park to avoid being arrested. Richard was barely controlling his anger. Henry, because of your greed and irresponsibility, my son grew up on the streets. Do you have any idea what that means? I know it was terrible, but I never wanted that to happen. Robert placed more documents on the table. Henry, these are financial records from your company. Very interesting how your situation improved drastically right after Richard lost several important contracts. That has nothing to do with what we're discussing. Yes, it does, because you used insider information you obtained through Jennifer to harm Richard's business. That's speculation. Actually, it's facts. Jennifer had access to Richard's personal files, and you took advantage of that. Richard finally understood the extent of the manipulation. You orchestrated all this, seduced my wife, took my son away, and on top of that stole my business. I didn't steal anything. I just took advantage of market opportunities you created by destroying my family. Henry stood up again, agitated. Enough! You can't prove I did any of this intentionally, and even if you could, it's been 8 years. Statute of limitations. Robert smiled. Henry, abandoning a child is a crime, and there's no statute of limitations when it involves minors. The businessman paled. Besides, Robert continued, we have evidence of insider trading, manipulation of public contracts, and corporate fraud. Are you threatening me? We're offering you a chance to cooperate, said Richard. I want you to tell everything to the authorities. In return, I won't push for your imprisonment. And what do you want in return? I want you to stay away from my family and my business for good, and I want a written confession of everything you did. Henry remained silent for several minutes. And if I refuse? Then we'll let the justice system decide your fate. 2 hours later, Henry had signed a full confession admitting his involvement in Matthew's disappearance and his dishonest business practices. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When Richard returned to the apartment in Beverly Hills, he found Joey playing with a puzzle while Mrs. Ruth was preparing dinner. "How did it go, Mr. Richard?" asked the lady. "We got the answers we needed," said Richard, sitting down next to Joey. "And you? How was your day?" "Mrs. Ruth told me stories from when I was little," said Joey excitedly. "She said I cried a lot when she found me. And what else did she tell you?" "That I always asked about my dad, and that she promised that one day I would find my real family." Richard looked at Mrs. Ruth with gratitude. "You always knew this day would come?" "I had faith, Mr. Richard. A child with so much love in his heart can't stay lost forever." That night, Richard received a call from the lab. The DNA results were ready. "Mr. Anderson, it is with great pleasure that I confirm Joey is biologically your son." Richard hung up the phone and looked at the boy sleeping on the couch. After 8 years, he finally had his son back. But he knew the hardest part was yet to come. Joey had grown up as a different person. He had memories, experiences, and a way of seeing the world that Richard needed to respect. The next morning, he sat down with Joey for a serious talk. "Joey, or Matthew, what do you prefer I call you?" "I think I'm still Joey," said the boy. "Matthew seems like a different person." "Okay. Joey, what do you know about having a father?" "Mrs. Ruth told me that fathers take care of their children, give them food and a place to live, and that they love us even when we do wrong things." "That's right. And would you like to have a father?" Joey thought for a moment. "I would, but I don't want to make Mrs. Ruth sad." "What if I told you that Mrs. Ruth can continue being your grandmother in your heart while I am your real father? Is that possible?" "Yes, it is. Families come in all shapes." Joey smiled for the first time since he had arrived at the apartment. "Then I want to try." That afternoon, Richard took Joey to see his house in Marina del Rey. It was a huge mansion with a pool and garden, very different from the simple world the boy had grown up in. "Wow, it's really big," said Joey, impressed. "Very different from where you lived, huh?" "Yes, but you know what's strange? I've dreamed about this pool." Richard felt a pang in his heart. Even after all these years, something inside Joey remembered his true home. "Want to take a tour of the house?" They went up to the second floor where Matthew's old room was. Richard had kept everything exactly as it was 8 years ago. When Joey entered the room, he stopped halfway. "I know this place," he whispered. "What do you mean?" "I dream about this room, about this bed, these toys." Joey went to a shelf and picked up a blue teddy bear. "Teddy bear," he said, as if the memory came back out of nowhere. Richard began to cry. That was Matthew's favorite toy when he was little. "You really remember," said Richard, hugging his son. "Some things are coming back," said Joey, "but others are still confusing." "No rush. We'll figure it all out together." That night, Joey wanted to go back to the apartment with Mrs. Ruth. He wasn't ready yet to leave the only family he had known for 8 years. During the following weeks, they established a routine. Joey spent the mornings with Richard at the company, learning about the family business. The afternoons were dedicated to father and son activities, soccer, movies, walks in the park. But every evening, Joey would return to stay with Mrs. Ruth. "Mr. Richard," the lady said on one of those evenings, "Joey is torn between 2 worlds. This can't last forever." "I know, Mrs. Ruth, but I don't want to force anything. You need to understand one thing. Joey loves me because I took care of him when he needed it, but you are his father. That's where he truly belongs. And you? How will you be?" "I'll be happy knowing he is where he should be." The wisdom of that simple woman continued to impress Richard. A month later, Joey made an important decision. "Dad," he said for the first time, making Richard's heart race, "I want to live in the big house, but can I visit Mrs. Ruth every day?" "Of course you can, and she can come have dinner with us whenever she wants. Then it's decided. The move wasn't easy. Joey had nightmares the first few nights, calling out for Mrs. Ruth. But gradually, he adapted to his new home. Richard hired the best private tutors to help Joey catch up on his lost years of education. The boy was smart and learned quickly, but he still preferred the life lessons Mrs. Ruth taught him. "Dad, Mrs. Ruth said money can't buy happiness. Is that true?" "It's true, Joey. Money helps solve some problems, but happiness comes from being with people we love." "So, are you happy now?" "I'm the happiest man in the world." But not everything was resolved. Jennifer had been trying to get closer to Joey, but the boy wasn't ready to accept a mother who had abandoned him. "Dad, why does the lady who says she's my mother want to see me?" "Because she misses you very much, and because she made a terrible mistake, but she never stopped loving you." "Do you forgive people who make mistakes?" "It depends on the mistake, Joey. But usually yes, especially when the person is truly sorry." "Then, can I try to forgive her too?" Jennifer's first visit was tense. She arrived nervous, carrying expensive gifts that Joey looked at indifferently. "Hi, Matthew," she said timidly. "My name is Joey," the boy replied. "Sorry. Hi, Joey. Are you really my mother?" "Yes, I am. I carried you in my belly for 9 months, and you were born on a very happy day." "Then why did you leave me with the bad man?" Jennifer started to cry. "Because I made the biggest mistake of my life. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was very wrong." Mrs. Ruth said that when we make mistakes, we have to apologize and try to make things right. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. Joey was silent for a few minutes. "Can you try to be my mother again?" "I can try if you let me." "Then you can try, but slowly." Gradually, a new family dynamic began to form. Joey had Richard as his father, Jennifer trying to reclaim her place as mother, and Mrs. Ruth as the grandmother of the heart who was part of everything. Jennifer's visits became regular. She learned not to force the situation, respecting Joey's time to accept her presence. "Mom," Joey said during one of these visits, making Jennifer cry with emotion, "can you tell me what I was like when I was a baby?" "Of course I can, my love. You were the most beautiful baby in the world and very smart too." "And did you sing to me?" "I did. Do you want me to sing now?" Joey nodded, and Jennifer sang the same lullaby she had sung 8 years ago. To everyone's surprise, Joey began to sing along, as if the song had never left his memory. 6 months after the reunion, Richard decided to organize a special party. It would be Joey's 13th birthday, but also a celebration of the reunited family. "Dad, can I invite my friends from the street?" asked Joey. "Of course you can. This is your home now." The party was a unique event. Street kids sharing space with well-dressed executives, Mrs. Ruth chatting animatedly with Richard's business partners, Jennifer helping serve food to those who had never had a decent meal. "Thank you, Dad," said Joey when they were alone for a moment. "For what?" "For not giving up on looking for me, and for letting me keep my street family too. Joey, you taught me that family isn't just about sharing the same blood. It's about who truly cares. Mrs. Ruth always says that. Mrs. Ruth is a very wise woman." That night, after everyone had left, the new family gathered in the living room. Richard, Joey, Jennifer, and Mrs. Ruth. "You know what's most amazing about this whole story?" said Jennifer. "What?" asked Joey. "It's that sometimes the bad things that happen end up leading us to even better places." "How so?" "If you hadn't gotten lost, you would never have met Mrs. Ruth, and she would never have met us." Joey looked at Mrs. Ruth. "It's true, Grandma. You saved me on the streets, but I also saved you from loneliness." "Exactly, my grandson. We saved each other." Richard watched that scene and realized how his life had completely changed. Before finding Joey, he lived only for work. Now he had a real family, formed not just by blood ties, but by choices of love. "Dad," said Joey, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course." "Do you still get angry with the people who separated us?" Richard thought carefully before answering. "Joey, I've learned that carrying anger in your heart doesn't bring anyone back and doesn't fix anything. What matters is that we're together now. And do you forgive them? I'm learning to forgive, especially your mother, who was confused at the time and truly regretted it. Jennifer held Richard's hand. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you that we have Joey back. A year later, life had completely stabilized. Joey was studying at one of the best schools in Los Angeles, but he continued visiting his street friends every week, bringing food and clothes. Richard created a foundation in his son's name to help abandoned children. Mrs. Ruth became the volunteer coordinator, using her street experience to guide the work. Jennifer, in turn, dedicated all her free time to working at the foundation as well. It was her way of trying to make up for the lost years and the mistakes made. "Dad, can I tell you a secret?" said Joey one of those afternoons. "Go ahead." "Sometimes I'm glad I got lost." "Why?" "Because now I know what it's like to live on both sides. I know what it's like to have nothing, and also what it's like to have everything. And that helps me understand people better. You're very wise for your 13 years. Mrs. Ruth always says that suffering teaches things that no school can teach. And she's right. Dad, do you think our story will have a happy ending?" Richard looked out the window, where he saw Jennifer and Mrs. Ruth playing ball with some children from the foundation. "Joey, I think our story is already happy. A happy ending isn't a destination, it's the path we choose every day. So let's keep choosing to be happy." "Yes, my son, yes we will." 2 years had passed since the reunion on the night of that luxurious hotel. Joey, now 15, had become a balanced, caring young man aware of the world's social differences. He continued to wear the golden watch that had reunited him with his family, but now as a symbol of unity instead of separation. "Dad, you know what I want to do when I grow up?" said Joey during one of those father-son conversations. "Tell me." "I want to expand our foundation to help more lost children like I was. I don't want any child to have to live on the street." "That's a beautiful dream, Joey, and you can count on me to make it happen. I can count on all of us. Our family has grown bigger, hasn't it?" Richard looked around. Mrs. Ruth was in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming an old song. Jennifer was helping with homework for some children from the foundation who often came to the house. Joey was organizing his things for school the next day. "It has grown much bigger," Richard agreed, "and much stronger too." That evening, during dinner, Joey made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Family, I've decided I want to officially change my name." "To what?" asked Jennifer. "Joey Matthew Anderson. I want to keep both names because they represent two parts of my life that are important." "Joey is who you've become," said Mrs. Ruth. "And Matthew is who you've always been," Richard added. "Exactly. Now I am both." The decision was celebrated by the whole family. Joey Matthew represented the perfect union between the boy who grew up on the streets and the heir to a prosperous family. 3 months later, Henry was convicted of neglect of a dependent and corporate fraud. His company went bankrupt, and he lost all the assets he had gained dishonestly. But Joey surprised everyone by making an unexpected request. "Dad, I want to visit Henry in prison." "Why?" "Because Mrs. Ruth always taught me that forgiving is good for the one who forgives, not just for the one who is forgiven." "Are you sure?" "I am. He did some very bad things, but I don't want to carry anger in my heart." The visit was emotional. Henry, now a defeated and remorseful man, cried upon seeing Joey. "You've grown so much," said Henry. "I have, and I've learned a lot too." "Joey, I'm sorry for everything I did. I destroyed your childhood out of greed and pride." "You didn't destroy it, Uncle Henry. You changed the path, but you didn't destroy anything." "What do you mean?" "If I hadn't gotten lost, I never would have met Mrs. Ruth, and she changed my life as much as my father did." Henry was surprised by the teenager's maturity. "Do you forgive me?" "I forgive you. But that doesn't mean what you did was right. It means I choose not to be angry." "Thank you, Joey. That means a lot to me." When they left the prison, Richard hugged his son with pride. "Joey, you amaze me every day." "Why?" "Because you have a much bigger heart than I do. I still struggle to forgive Henry." "Dad, forgiving isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about choosing not to let the hurt control our lives. Another lesson from Mrs. Ruth being put into practice. On the last day of school before summer vacation, Joey gave a presentation at school about his story. The auditorium was completely silent as he talked about his years on the streets, reuniting with his family and the lessons he learned. I learned that family isn't just about who shares the same blood, Joey told his classmates. It's about who chooses to stand by your side, especially in tough times. I also learned that money can solve many problems, but it can't buy the most important things: love, loyalty, and peace of mind. And lastly, I learned that sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up becoming the best because they teach us what really matters in life. The audience gave a standing ovation. Several students approached him afterward to talk about their own family difficulties. That same day, Joey received a proposal from the school to become a student ambassador for social projects. Dad, they want me to help other students get involved with volunteer work. And do you want to do that? Very much. I think I can use my story to motivate others to help those in need. Then accept it. I'm sure you'll do very well. During the vacation, Joey organized a special project. He gathered 15 classmates to spend a week working at the foundation, serving food to homeless people and playing with abandoned children. You'll see that helping others changes us too, Joey told his friends on the first day. And he was right. By the end of the week, several wealthy teenagers had changed their perspective on life and promised to continue volunteering. Joey, said one of the girls, thank you for showing us there's a world beyond our small problems. We all have our problems, Joey replied. The difference is that some have more resources to solve them. During that vacation, something nobody expected happened. Mrs. Ruth, at 72 years old, received a marriage proposal. Mr. Joey, she said to Richard, using the affectionate term she'd adopted. Mr. Anthony asked me to marry him. Mrs. Ruth, how wonderful. And will you accept? I don't know. I'm afraid of leaving you all. Joey, who was listening to the conversation, approached. Grandma, you deserve to be happy, and we won't stop being family just because you get married. Are you sure, my grandson? I'm sure. In fact, it would be great to have a grandpa too. Anthony was a 75-year-old widower who'd met Mrs. Ruth at church. A simple and kind man, he'd been charmed by the woman's wisdom and kindness. The wedding was celebrated in the foundation's chapel, with the whole family united and dozens of children supported by the project. Joey was the ring bearer. Richard walked Mrs. Ruth down the aisle and Jennifer organized the entire celebration. Thank you for giving me such a big family, said Mrs. Ruth in her wedding speech. You've turned a lonely woman into a happy matriarch. We're the ones who thank you for turning us into a real family, Richard replied. Joey, now 16 years old, was preparing for college entrance exams. He wanted to study business administration to help expand the foundation, but he was also considering psychology to better understand people going through difficulties. Dad, I think I'll do a double major, said Joey. Can you handle it? I can. I want to be prepared to help people in every possible way. Then you have my full support. Jennifer, in turn, had decided to study social work at 45. It's never too late to start making a difference, she told Joey. I'm proud of you, Mom. It was the first time Joey had called her Mom without hesitation. At Joey's 17th birthday party, the celebration was even bigger than previous ones. Over 200 people attended, from important business people to homeless individuals Joey had helped over the years. Son, said Richard during his speech, you've transformed not only our family, but the entire community around us. Dad, I've learned that transformation is contagious. When one person changes for the better, they inspire others to change too. And where did you learn that? From all of you. Each of you taught me something different about how to be a better person. That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered on the porch to talk about the future. Joey, what do you envision for the coming years? Asked Anthony, who was now officially part of the family. I want to expand our foundation to other cities. I want it to become a national network supporting abandoned children. That's an ambitious project, said Jennifer. But possible, Richard added. especially with all the experience you already have. I'll need help from all of you. You can count on us, said Mrs. Ruth. After all, this project was born from your heart, but it was the whole family that nurtured it. 2 years later, Joey was in his final year of high school, and the foundation had expanded to 3 cities in Los Angeles. He divided his time between studies, social work, and normal teenage activities. "Son, don't you feel overwhelmed?" Richard asked one evening. "No, Dad. You know why?" "Why?" "Because I do what I love. And when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work." "You're going far, Joey." "We're going far, Dad. This here is a family project." At the high school graduation, Joey was chosen as the class speaker. His speech moved the entire school. "5 years ago, I was a lost boy on the streets," Joey began. "Today I'm here graduating from the best school in the city. This didn't happen by luck or a miracle. It happened because people chose to believe in me and help me believe in myself. Each one of you has the power to change someone's life. You don't need to wait to be rich or powerful. Sometimes a simple gesture, a word of encouragement, or just being there is enough to make a difference. I encourage all of you to look for ways to help other people, not because you have an obligation, but because helping others is the fastest way to find purpose and happiness in your own life." The speech was interrupted several times by applause. When Joey finished, the audience stood up in ovation. That night, at the graduation party, Joey was approached by several classmates' parents interested in contributing to the foundation. "Joey, your story is inspiring," said a businesswoman. "How can we help with your project?" "In whatever way you can and want," Joey replied. "Money helps, but time and dedication help even more." 3 months later, when college started, Joey had already formed a group of 15 families who took turns supporting the foundation's work. "Dad, I think we're ready to take the next step," Joey said at a family meeting. "What step?" "Expand to Chicago and Houston." "That's a big decision, Joey. Are you sure?" "I am. And you know why? Because our family has grown so much that it now includes hundreds of people. Every child we help becomes our family. Every volunteer who joins the project becomes our family." "You're right," said Richard. "Let's move forward." The expansion was a success. In 2 years, the Joey Matthew Foundation was present in 10 American cities, had helped over 1,000 children, and had 300 regular volunteers. "Joey," said Mrs. Ruth at one of these meetings, "do you remember when you were little and I told you that one day you would find your family?" "Yes, I remember, Grandma. I never imagined your family would be so big." "Me neither, Grandma. Me neither." On his 20th birthday, Joey decided to do something special. Instead of a traditional party, he organized a gathering of all the people who had been important on his journey. Present were Richard and Jennifer, Mrs. Ruth and Anthony, Robert Miller, the detective who had become a friend of the family, dozens of former homeless people who now had stable lives, foundation volunteers, and even some of the hotel security guards who had witnessed the first meeting. "Everyone," Joey said during his speech, "today I turned 20, but I feel my real life began 8 years ago, that night at the hotel. I was a lost, scared boy with no identity. Today I know exactly who I am. I'm a son, grandson, friend, social project leader, and most of all, I'm someone who believes in the transformative power of love. Every person in this room contributed to me becoming who I am today, and the most amazing thing is that it doesn't end here. Every life we touch, every child we help, every family we rebuild multiplies that love throughout the world. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't destiny, it's a choice. And thank you for choosing to be my family." The silence that followed was broken by a round of applause that lasted 5 minutes. That night, when everyone had left, Joey sat alone on the porch of the house where he now lived. It was the same house where he had grown up until he was 4, but it was also completely different. Richard approached and sat beside his son. "What are you thinking about?" "I was thinking about how funny fate is, Dad." "Why?" "That watch that brought me back to you. I almost sold it so many times when I was starving on the streets." "And why didn't you sell it?" Because Mrs. Ruth always said it was my only connection to my real family. She was right, wasn't she? She was. But you know what I find most amazing? What? That even if you had sold the watch, I believe we would have found each other anyway. Why? Because true love always finds a way. It might take time. It might be complicated. But it always finds one. Joey smiled and looked at the watch on his wrist. The tiny engraved stars shimmered in the moonlight. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Go ahead. Sometimes I still have nightmares about that night in the square. And what happens in those nightmares? I'm lost forever. You never find me. But that didn't happen. It didn't. And you know what comforts me when I wake up from those nightmares? What? Remembering that even in the worst moment of my life, I wasn't really alone. Mrs. Ruth found me, and that even when lost, I still had this watch connecting me to my real family. Joey, can I ask you a question? Of course. Do you still feel torn between two identities? Joey and Matthew? Joey thought for a long moment before answering. No, Dad. I feel whole. Joey Matthew isn't two people. He's one person who lived two different lives and managed to combine the best of both. Explain that further. Matthew gave me a blood family, material comfort, education. Joey gave me empathy, the strength to overcome hardships and the ability to understand who needs help. And you wouldn't want to erase the Joey part? Never, Dad. The Joey part is what allows me to truly help others. If I had always grown up with money, maybe I'd never understand what it means to need help. Richard hugged his son with pride. You are an extraordinary young man, Joey Matthew. I am what you all helped me become. 2 years later, Joey graduated with honors in business administration and immediately started his psychology degree. The foundation had become one of the largest social organizations in the country, recognized internationally for its innovative work. Joey, said the college dean at a ceremony, do you have plans to expand your work to other countries? Yes, I do. I believe the problem of abandoned children exists all over the world, and our methodology can be adapted to different cultures. That's an ambitious project. My family taught me to dream big, Joey replied, looking at Richard, Jennifer, Mrs. Ruth, and Anthony in the audience. 6 months later, Joey received a proposal to take the foundation to Canada. It was the first step in the international expansion. Family, Joey said in a meeting, the time for a decision has come. Accepting this proposal means I'll have to travel a lot, spending months abroad. And do you want to accept it? Asked Jennifer. I do, but only if you all agree. You are my safe harbor. I won't make big decisions without your support. Joey, said Mrs. Ruth, I raised you to fly high. Now it's time to really fly. Grandma, won't you miss me? I'll miss you very much, but I'll feel even prouder. The decision was unanimous. The whole family supported the international expansion. On the day of departure for Ottawa, the airport was full of people saying goodbye to Joey. Over 100 foundation volunteers, dozens of children helped by the project, and the entire family. Joey, said Richard, you're taking our love to other countries. I'm taking the love you taught me, Dad, and I'll bring back even more love. You'll be missed. I'll miss you all too, but I carry all of you in my heart. Joey hugged every important person in his life. When it was Mrs. Ruth's turn, she whispered in his ear, My grandson, do you remember what I used to tell you when you were little and had nightmares? I do, Grandma. You said that angels exist, and they look after us even when we don't see them. Well, then know that you have become an angel to many people, and angels are never truly far from those they love. Joey boarded the plane with tears in his eyes, but also with a heart full of purpose. Over the next 2 years, the Joey Matthew Foundation was established in 5 countries in Latin America. Joey traveled constantly, but he always returned to the United States to spend at least 1 week per month with his family. During one of these visits, he received news that changed everything. Joey, said Richard, I have a proposal for you. What proposal, Dad? The United Nations organization wants to appoint you as a special ambassador for issues concerning abandoned children worldwide. Joey remained silent for several minutes. "Dad, that means I'll have to live in New York. It does, for at least 5 years. And what about all of you? Joey, the time has come for you to fly on your own. You've managed to create something much bigger than our family. Now it's your responsibility to take this to the world. But what if I fail?" "You won't fail," said Jennifer, "because you carry within you all the strength you needed to survive on the streets and all the love you've received from your family. And even if you fail at something," added Mrs. Ruth, "you'll have learned something new to try again." Joey accepted the proposal. The nomination ceremony at the UN was broadcast live worldwide. In the audience was his entire American family, moved to see the boy who had once broken into a hotel becoming a global leader. "Ladies and gentlemen," Joey said in his inaugural speech, "I stand here today representing millions of children who are lost around the world, both literally and figuratively. My own story has taught me that no one is lost forever, as long as there are people willing to search, welcome, and love. As a UN ambassador, I commit to working so that every abandoned child in the world has the chance I had, the chance to find a family, receive an education, and discover their purpose in life. Because every child deserves to have someone who believes in them, even when they don't believe in themselves." The speech received a standing ovation from the entire UN Assembly. That night in his new apartment in New York, Joey called his family in the United States. "Everyone, we did it. The foundation is now an official UN project." "We are all very proud," said Richard. "Dad, you gave me roots. Now I can fly anywhere in the world." "And you'll always have a place to come back to," assured Jennifer. "My grandson," said Mrs. Ruth, "do you remember the first time you asked me if you would find your family?" "I do, Grandma. You found your family, and now your family is the whole world." Joey looked out the apartment window. The city of New York shone below, full of possibilities. On his wrist, the golden watch that had changed his life continued to mark time. But now it was no longer just a symbol of the past. It was a constant reminder that love always finds a way to bring together people who belong to each other. 5 years later, the Joey Matthew Foundation had become the world's largest organization, supporting abandoned children. More than 50 countries participated in the project, and over 100,000 children had been helped. Joey, now 29 years old, decided it was time to return to the United States for good. "Family," he said in the Sunday call, "I'm coming home." "For good?" asked Richard excitedly. "For good. I want to get married, have children, and continue the work here in the United States." "And is there someone special?" asked Jennifer, curious. "Yes, there is. You're going to love meeting Claire." Claire was an Australian psychologist I'd met during my work at the United Nations organization. Coming from a simple family, she also dedicated her life to helping underprivileged children. "She reminds me of you," said Joey. "She has Grandma Ruth's generous heart, her father's determination, and her mother's capacity to forgive." The wedding was celebrated on Malibu Beach, with 300 guests from 15 different countries. Children supported by the foundation scattered rose petals, volunteers sang in the choir, and Mrs. Ruth, now 80 years old, gave the blessing prayer. "May you both continue to be instruments of love in the world," said the wise woman. "And may your children grow up knowing that family is the most important thing in life." Joey and Claire moved into a house near Richard's mansion. They wanted to be close to family, but also have their own space. 2 years later, Sophie Ruth was born, Richard and Jennifer's first granddaughter. The name was a tribute to the grandmother at heart, who had changed everyone's lives. "Grandma Ruth," said Joey, placing the baby in the elderly woman's arms, "this is your great-granddaughter." "She's beautiful," said Mrs. Ruth with tears in her eyes. "She'll be very lucky to grow up in a family like this." "She'll have all the luck in the world," Joey confirmed, "because she'll grow up knowing she's loved unconditionally." On Sophie's first birthday, the family organized a party that was also a celebration of the entire journey. Present were everyone from the hotel security guards who had chased Joey 15 years earlier to United Nations executives who continued the international work. "Everyone," said Joey during his speech, "today my daughter turns 1, but I want to take this opportunity to celebrate something else too. I want to celebrate the power of second chances. Every person here had a second chance in life, a chance to love more, to forgive more, to help more. My family gave me a second chance. I gave second chances to thousands of children around the world, and now Sophie represents a new chance for us to continue spreading love throughout the world. Thank you for being my family. Thank you for teaching me that love always wins. When everyone had left, the immediate family gathered on the porch. Joey held Sophie in his lap. Claire was by his side. Richard and Jennifer were talking quietly. Mrs. Ruth and Anthony were telling stories about their grandchildren. "Dad," said Joey, "there's something I never told you." "What?" "That first night at the hotel, when you saw me with the watch, I thought you were going to scold me or call the police." "And why didn't you run away?" "Because when you looked at me, I saw love in your eyes. It was the first time in a long time that someone had looked at me that way. And I saw my lost son," said Richard. "Even before I was sure, my heart already knew." Sophie started to cry, and Joey began to rock her gently. To everyone's surprise, he started singing the same lullaby that Jennifer used to sing to him when he was a child. "How do you remember that song?" asked Jennifer, moved. "I think some things stay engraved in your heart forever," Joey replied. Claire looked at her husband with admiration. "Joey, you're going to be an amazing father. I'll try to be at least half the father my dad was to me." "You already are," said Richard. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Joey stayed alone on the porch with Sophie in his lap. The girl slept peacefully, protected by her family's love. "Sophie," whispered Joey, "you were born into a very special family, a family that was built not just by blood, but by choices of love. You'll grow up hearing amazing stories about Great-Grandma Ruth, who saved me on the street, about Grandpa Richard, who never gave up searching for me, about Grandma Jennifer, who learned the strength of forgiveness, and about all the others who chose to be part of our story. And when you grow up, you'll understand that family isn't just where you're born. It's where you choose to stay, where you feel loved, and where you learn to love others." Sophie opened her little eyes and looked at her father. Joey smiled and pointed to the watch on his wrist. "See this, my daughter. This watch brought me back home. One day maybe I'll tell you the whole story." The golden watch shimmered under the moonlight, the tiny engraved stars reflecting as a constant reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a light that can guide us back home. 15 years had passed since that night at the luxury hotel, when a beggar boy had trespassed into a world that wasn't his, unknowingly carrying the key to reuniting a broken family. Now, Joey Matthew Anderson was a father, husband, world-renowned social leader, and most importantly, a person who had turned his pain into purpose, his loss into gain, and his story of abandonment into a story of love. The family had grown, the social work had expanded to dozens of countries, and thousands of lives had been transformed. But in the end, the greatest victory had been the simplest one. A father had found his son, a son had found his family, and everyone had learned that true love always finds its way home. End of story. So, what did you think of this emotional journey of reunion and transformation? Tell us in the comments which part of the story touched your heart the most, and if you know similar stories of families who reunited. Do you believe forgiveness can truly transform lives as it did with Joey and Jennifer? Leave your honest opinions and don't forget to hit that cheeky like and subscribe to the channel for more moving and inspiring stories. You're awesome.